Guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Man Drew, and I'm here to do a sort of discussion video. To put it specifically, what I want to talk about in this video is more about the new information from the volume extras that we got for My Hero Academia pertaining to the UA Traitor. And pretty much what I want to talk about in this video is talk about what if or what would have happened if the UA Traitor was revealed earlier, specifically during the summer camp or the summer training camp arc. Because, as I said, there is some information that we've gotten recently over the past few weeks at the moment that I am posting this video about how Hirokoshi has been structuring the story involving the UA Traitor, and some more information that came out about the summer training camp arc and what it could have been and what it is now. So that's what we're going to be talking about in this video, pretty much talking about what would have happened if the UA Traitor was revealed a lot earlier, specifically during the summer training camp arc. And the reasoning why that this is actually a thing is because it was revealed in volume 34 of the volume extras for My Hero Academia that was, quote, originally planned to be revealed during the summer camp arc or the training camp arc as a traitor, and this is during volumes 9 and 10. And how Hirokoshi brings up how that would have changed a lot, which in reality it would have. But this idea pertaining to the summer camp arc is actually something that is brought up in actually sort of supplementary material, specifically when it comes to one of My Hero Academia's most recent projects, which is a stage play where Hirokoshi gave a specific comment about how when it came to the training camp, how when he started to introduce the villains, that's when the popularity of My Hero Academia began to dip, and how he had to cut certain aspects of the training camp from it because it was the villains that were involved in it, and how he had to immediately jump over to the fight between All For One and All Might, and how All Might was kind of this saving figure for Hirokoshi. So with those two pieces of information, we got a lot from it, because we get more about how the UA Traitor was supposed to get involved during the summer camp arc, and how that could have changed the story to be even longer or shorter, or better or worse. So I want to talk more about what possibly could have been Hirokoshi's original idea for the summer training camp, and what his involvement with the traitor was going to be in this arc in this video. So let's start off by pinpointing where most likely the dip in My Hero Academia readership came into play, particularly when it comes to the Japanese audience. Because we have to remember, even though My Hero Academia is a story about superheroes with a very American motif, it is still made for a Japanese audience, and that we as Americans or whoever just enjoy watching it alongside them. And most likely the dip in popularity happened in chapter 72, where it was hinted that the villains will be involved in the summer camp training arc. And if that is the case, that would make sense for why Hirokoshi may change the story significantly to cater to his Japanese audience. Because we in the West may have enjoyed seeing more of the villains, but that is not necessarily the case for Japan. Because from what we've seen, Japan has a very much a aversion to villains in My Hero Academia, that this is kind of the opposite in the West. And that potentially that dip in the surveys for that chapter of My Hero Academia would have served as reasoning for Hirokoshi to change the direction of this arc, and that he would need to cut certain things short involving the villains. So let's discuss and possibly predict what was cut during this arc. To start off, the most likely cut to this arc would be the villains' involvement in it. Because this arc starts off with the heroes just learning how to use their abilities more effectively. Pretty much what this entire arc was, a summer training camp arc, where they will be training their quirks to be better. But because villains would have to be involved in this arc, most likely than not, the villains, their interactions, and the fights were most likely cut. And where the cuts most likely occurred comes from very specific villains. One of the villains that could have been cut due to his involvement could be Moonfish, as we do not really see a fight between Bakugo and Shoto against Moonfish. And even more specifically, Moonfish apparently fights against Shoji as well as Tokoyami, But we never actually see him fight against them. We just see the results of the fight, which is that Shoji gets injured and that Tokoyami goes into a rampage with Dark Shadow. And we see more of potential fights being cut when it comes to the interactions between Toga versus Uraraka as well as Froppy. Because we do not really see them actually fight. We see movements between Uraraka and Froppy against Toga, and eventually Uraraka pinning Toga down. This all happens within chapter 80, and we can see that potentially Toga's fight could have been shortened because we've seen how long other fights against other villains lasted in this arc. The fight of Kendo and Tetsu versus Mustard was a fight that spanned over 2 chapters. But with Toga against Uraraka and Froppy, it was just 1 chapter. And even the fight against Moonfish, where Tokoyami slams Moonfish into the ground as Moonfish is fighting against Bakugo and Shoto, was also 1 chapter. And once again, we really do not see much of that fight. And something else to add on to this is that I believe in chapter 81, we see that Compress is able to capture Bakugo as well as Tokoyami without any type of resistance. And that there could have been a few more pages of Mr. Compress doing his thing, and we actually see the capture of Bakugo and Tokoyami. At the very least, the hints at they were captured before Deku, Shoto, and Shoji arrive on the scene to help with Toga against Froppy and Uraraka. As well as we got the fights of Spinner and Magne versus Tiger and Mandalay actually pretty much non-existent, as we cut to them pretty much already having the fights resolved without seeing that much action. Heck, it was the reveal of what Tiger's quirk was, and we just see that Tiger has wrapped Magne up and captured them without any context to how it happened. And even more, when it comes to stuff that we just didn't see, we didn't even see the confrontation with Awase and Momo versus the Chainsaw Nomu. All we get is them being chased, Momo being injured, and eventually Momo giving Awase the tracker device to weld on to this Nomu. So we don't even see how she got injured against this Chainsaw Nomu, and it's just all speculation. So we see that some of these fights with these other villains could have been cut due to the backlash of the villains being a part of this arc at all, and how this cut could have and most definitely did affect how the UA Traitor was going to be revealed in this arc. Because some other speculations that we could have from stuff that was cut could just be more villains could have been in this arc that Horikoshi had to cut and save for later. That there may have been a greater focus on those villains that were cut, and that they could have had fights with other members of Class 1B, where Class B could have been developed more in this arc. Or there could have just been more focus on the villains, because we get to see that Twice is introduced in this arc, but he really doesn't do anything, which is amazing since Twice would eventually play a bigger role in the story moving forward. But here, he just seems to be just a one-off villain that has a very useful quirk. Even Dabi really doesn't do anything in this fight besides burning down a forest and, being smug against Shoto. So yeah, that's pretty much speculations that we could make about the cut content that Horikoshi could have had during the summer training camp arc. And so now, let's dive into the what if when it comes to what if the traitor was revealed in this arc. And let's clarify a few things. When it comes to the reveal of the UA Traitor, we already know who the UA Traitor is. And if you do not know and you are just watching this video, I would say to click off and come back later when you're caught up more with the manga or when the anime comes up to this reveal so that you won't be spoiled. Okay? Now that the people who don't want to be spoiled have left, the UA Traitor was revealed later on in the series to be Aoyama. And that there were obviously hints to Aoyama being the traitor later on in the story, but this would have been the moment that he would have been revealed as the traitor if Horikoshi kept to that plan. But the thing is, most likely than not, what the reveal was going to be is revealed that he is the UA traitor to the audience. And that most likely than not, the students as well as the teachers would not have known that Aoyama is the traitor. So the difference that this would make is not necessarily major within the story, but major for the reader's perceptions of Aoyama. and that it could potentially have not led to the hints to Aoyama being the traitor later on, because the audience would already know who the UA Traitor is, and that there would be no need for him to be perceived as a red herring. But if it was revealed that he was the traitor sooner, we could have still had those panels, still had those moments, but that they could have been twisted in a way to make Aoyama even more sympathetic, to make him more understandable and more of like a tragic villain than just outright evil. And then we know the reasoning why Aoyama became a villain and became a traitor is because his life and the family that he loves was being threatened by All For One. But if we knew that he was the traitor prior, the scenes where we get to see him expressing his feelings, showing regret, showing remorse, showing guilt, may hit a little bit harder and make the actual reveal that he is the UA traitor to his other classmates hit even harder for the audience, because we would know before the reveal that he's not really a bad person, and that this would have probably affected the perception of the traitor reveal later on and have it be a little bit more positive than it was perceived by many others. Me personally, I enjoyed the reveal and I enjoyed the results of it, but many people didn't. So yeah, the big change that would happen from Aoyama being revealed to be the traitor a lot sooner may not necessarily affect the story in a big way, but would affect how the readers are perceiving the story by a lot. Because we have to remember that when it comes to the traitor plotline as it is now, Aoyama as a traitor is directly tied to All For One, and that this could have potentially have been the case from the beginning. But let's just say hypothetically he wasn't tied to All For One and that he was just tied to the League of Villains. Well, most likely the point where he was going to be revealed to be the traitor is when we see that Dabi notices that Aoyama is hiding behind the bushes and doesn't say anything. Potentially this could have been Aoyama with someone else, potentially Hagakure, and how they notice the villains and the villains notice them and they think that they get caught, but then Dabi decides not to advance any further because he knows that the traitor is there and that he wouldn't want to kill the traitor. I mean, he would probably still definitely have killed them, but he probably would have had more second thoughts about it. And potentially, we could have gotten the reveal of Aoyama being the traitor even before the villains are more properly introduced into the summer training camp arc. Because there is a single panel where we get to see all of the individuals, all of the students of class 1A, for the most part, sleeping. We get to see all of the girls are present. We get to see that most of the guys are present, except for a one futon bed that is empty as if no one is sleeping and that someone got out and did something. And that could have been the moment that Aoyama is revealed to be the traitor and that he was communicating to the League of Villains the location of the summer camp and when would be the best time for them to invade. So that could have been the moment where the reveal could have happened and that everything could have remained relatively the same. I think the story would have worked best if Aoyama was tied to All For One, because if he wasn't, he would constantly have been a traitor throughout the story to the League of Villains, and that the League of Villains would have had more information on the heroes and had more plans planned out to take down the heroes and to take down All Might easier. But having it tied to All For One and then having All For One taken out of the story makes Aoyama feel less responsible for the actions that he performed because he didn't continue being a traitor after All For One was put in prison. So it would make Aoyama more sympathetic and make him less of a villain if we went down the same path that we did now, just that Aoyama is revealed to the audience to be the traitor and not to the other students. And that the panels that we see later on will be building on the idea that Aoyama feels guilty for being a traitor, which would make him more sympathetic and more relatable to the audience, which would make the ending and the reveal of Aoyama being the traitor a little bit more palatable to other readers, except myself, who was already enjoying it as is. So yeah, at the very least, it being revealed earlier would have just been a huge gut punch to the audience that would have hurt us even more. And whether or not that's going to be better or worse, I cannot say for certain because we just will never know because we live in this version where the traitor was revealed a lot later. So yeah, that's pretty much what I really want to talk about in this chapter and sort of like my what if. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Did you enjoy this kind of like discussion? Do you want me to do a more proper what if when it comes to the story of My Hero Academia? Like really dive into like certain aspects, like what if like Mirio got one for all, or what if Shigaraki could have been a hero, or what if All For One chose someone else to be his like future vestige? I could do potentially what ifs on those topics if that's something that you're interested in, and I see that there's a lot more interest for this type of content from this video. So yeah, just leave your thoughts down below on what did you think on this video, and if you want to see me doing more what ifs, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you want to see more content like this and me talking about My Hero Academia. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!